So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel Amado. I am the director of Sirius Art Centre, an organisation based in Cove, County Cork, the Republic of Ireland. I have been practicing as a curator for a while, and in that context, I have had the pleasure and the honour of meeting the artist Aikaterini Gegisian, when both of us were located in a town in the northeast of England called Middlesbrough. And this was maybe 5 years ago or so that we met. Since then, so through our personal encounter, there was also an opportunity for an artistic encounter to evolve. So since that moment that we have been in dialogue about our lives, but also our practices, and also that we have also generated different ideas and different projects. And the reason we are here today is to discuss one of these projects. So welcome everyone to this session. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will let Aikaterini just introduce herself briefly, and then we will go into our discussion. We will present two video works, part of the discussion, and they are the reason we are here today. And they will be they will be presented in the context of a set of ideas that we want to explore. And then there will be opportunity for any one of you here to also intervene, ask questions, make comments, reactions, etc. So Aikaterini, you could let us know where you are based at the moment, and you know, briefly about your existence as an artist.
Miguel, thank you for setting this up and for commissioning. Sirius has commissioned the first episode of the Manipulator vlog, which is the work that we are here to discuss, and for supporting my practice over the past 6 years. So I'm an artist, which I describe my work as an expanded collage practice. It encompasses mainly moving image and photographic material, but it has expanded to include also found objects. This is a very embryonic stage of, let's say, the more sculptural part of the practice, still in early stages. I normally based in the UK, but as with a lot of people, lockdown has given them an opportunity to relocate or go back home in a sense, or relocate to other places. So I have spent the whole of the lockdown in my hometown in Greece, and actually in the house of my grandfather, which is the place where I was also born. With a brief, I was away briefly for a few months for a residence in Leipzig, but mainly I've been here looking after the house and the garden.
Okay. So maybe we could start by that. Before we even see any artwork or engage with any artwork, I like to start by saying that so Aikaterini has been developing a body of work which is called the Manipulator vlog, which she just mentioned, and the Manipulator vlog is a result from the experience that you had of being, you know, during the COVID-19, working from your hometown, from a place that was familiar to you. And so could you tell us a little bit like how the idea of this project emerged, and what were the needs that you were feeling, or what were you trying to respond to, and how that may connect a lot with your personal experience of being under lockdown or engaging with the context from which you come from in a new way?
Coming to develop the Manipulator blog was a long process. So it is like now produced the first one and premiered it on 30th of June. So a year and a half, it has been a year and a half in the making, and it is the result of a series of circumstances. First circumstance is that somehow the garden was in complete disrepair. I have never in my life before the lockdown cultivated anything to eat. I had plants, but I didn't cultivate the land. I didn't know. I was familiar with the processes because my grandparents and my parents were cultivating. They had allotments, they were producers, but I didn't. And because I started doing it, because it was in such disrepair and everyone around me were elders, so they couldn't do it. So I was like, okay, let me do this to help them. And then this action sparked something that I never imagined. It was a complete dedication and passion to producing food. So this was a first circumstance. I started documenting this process through making what I also mentioned in one of the first episode, Crops of the Day, by showcasing my produce on Instagram, very reluctantly and very shyly, because I am not of the generation where you expose on social media too much of your personal life. And then people really liked it, and they were waiting for it. When I wasn't sharing them the news of the garden, they were asking. So I said that there was a kind of there was something that people engage with, the process of gardening. Second set of circumstances was that I discovered in this house of my grandfather, which I was trying to fix because it was also in not a functional house. I discovered in boxes my collection of magazines, my teenage collection of magazines. I was collecting them, I think, from the age of 14, I suppose, until I left for the UK at the age of 18, but also over the summers, because I see some of them are still when I was 19. They are even when I was in the UK, from 1995, 1994, 5, 6. This is the end date. And this also sparked a series of processes in my head. Because for people that know my practice, and many people will not know my practice, I have been working a lot with photographic images of popular culture and finding this collection of magazines and working by collecting and creating collections of certain type of image histories. So when I discovered that I was already doing this as a teenager, I thought, oh, these were the seeds of my artistic voice. Let's say I was already doing it unconsciously, what I end up doing as an artist. So this was another set of circumstances. And I ended up starting working with the 90s as a kind of image culture for the first time. And somehow, and I started developing another body of work, which is a photographic-based body of work called Exercise in Speaking Out First, which is the photographic collage aspect of the experience of the lockdown. And then the vlog came out from in Leipzig, where I told you I was briefly away, and I went to Leipzig. I discovered an artist friend had the Manipulator magazine, the archive of the Manipulator magazine, which was a 90s high fashion magazine, which is what I suppose as a teenager in Greece I would have been inspired to, this large format elite construction, largest format magazine that had impeccable photography, and it was the absolute refinement of fashion. And I filmed it. So this was another circumstances. Then somehow I was also, during the pandemic, watching a lot of YouTube videos in order to understand how to garden. So all this set of circumstances came together to start thinking, okay, I have here some type of engagement. People want the narrative of the garden. I am looking at the 90s because I have thought that I have found my artistic voice then. And vlog is a process. It is something that is it is engaging audiences in a much more direct way, and in creating communities and in creating certain types of publics which art could not compete with. So these were the dynamics that came together, and I decided somehow the first episode of the Manipulator was created. Manipulator vlog was created.
Okay, so I think now it could be interesting to actually watch the first episode, because it also functions as a sort of like a visual expression of what you just said, and introduces your voice, your action, and we can maybe relate to what you said by encountering the work. And so I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second. So here.
Hello.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and now.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my vlog. Aikaterini here, an artist attempting to live the rural life in COVID times.
Okay, so better like this.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my vlog. It is Aikaterini here, an artist attempting to live the rural life in COVID times. Actually, this is a half-truth. I'm also looking back at the 90s, trying to understand how it was constructed as a neoliberal subject. I'm speculating how my future could have been different. So, let's get started. Spring is a time of intense activity in the garden. This year I planted for the first time potatoes, which by now have bloomed into this magnificent carpet. I planted 5 different varieties. I went out of my way to find seeds of blue, purple and pink potatoes. Don't ask me why the trouble. I was curious to see if they will grow here. I begin my day by walking around the garden. I often sit by the potatoes and drink my morning coffee there. They make great company.
Εγώ ζω με την εποχή μου, την εξέλιξη, την υψηλή απόδοση.
Then I check how the plants are doing and what needs my attention, making mental notes of things to do. I mostly do pruning, weeding, replanting in the morning, and water the plants in late afternoon. In between, when it gets too hot, I work indoors in my studio, looking through piles of images, making collages and editing films. After the morning walk around the garden and the morning coffee with the potatoes, and before intense farm labor begins, I collect vegetables that are ripe. I wash them and just get them ready for lunch.
Σε κομμάτια χοιρινό, απλά προσθέτω γλυκό ξινή σάλτσα.
I call it crop of the day and usually take a picture or make a video of my efforts.
Εγώ θέλω σιγουριά.
Today I collected young kale, which I'm also growing for the first time, Swiss chard, fennel tops and radicchio leaves that grew by themselves from seeds scattered in the garden last spring.
I don't have time to waste.
Happy accidents do happen, and I'm always amazed by the force of nature. It does not need to control time or plan the future.
Μια ιδέα όλο φρούτα και γεύση.
Another happy accident is that some of the garden weeds like nettle and parsley are also super tasty. I collect them almost daily as well. Last items in today's basket, garlic and Greek cardamom, a local variety of watercress, confuse with cardamom, the much-loved South Asian spice.
When I fall in love.
In the afternoon, I will replant my last tomato seedlings. I managed to grow from seeds the Nerondo variety with dark, almost black color and intense flavor. In total, with today's planting, I have 17 tomato plants from 6 different varieties. In a couple of weeks, the first tomatoes will be ready, plus the first potatoes will be done. We'll keep you posted.
Okay. Okay. It was actually nice to see it, to watch it again, because it was
welcome to the Crime Life Project podcast. I'm pleased to help you unlock your.
Who is taking over?
It's YouTube. It just went somewhere else. So, I mean, I could ask you, I think I would like to ask you something about the specifics of this video we just watched, and then go back to something that you say as an introduction. Here we can see the mix of the mobile camera, where you are narrating what you do in the garden, right? Then you have the still images, which come from this collection of cutouts from the magazines or snapshots that you take from specific images. And then you have also this the moving image that you found moving image that you use to create a bit of historic context, because of even the images from the magazine, like Lenny Kravitz or kind of the horoscopes, or some of the advertising, I'm interested in this, where all these, apart from the collection of the magazine collection that you mentioned, these other Greek found images or moving images or others, where do you got them from, and how do you see they whether or not they provide a bit of context to your 90s, your specific 90s, or to the 90s of broadly people of your age in Europe at the time?
So the Manipulator magazine, there's a specific action I'm looking through. So I'm filming myself looking through the magazines. So you have this kind of turning of pages.
Yeah.
Because this was the largest magazine that was ever produced. I think it's 50 by 70 or something. I should have written it down, but it is the largest format. It's like that big, and because I filmed it, I have again with a mobile camera. I have it set it up stable, and I'm looking down at it. Because of the large scale of the magazine, it is cropped, so you see it has very specific aesthetic. You never see the whole image. You see part of it, and you see the image being turned. The magazine has a very specific aesthetic, as I told you, which is the high fashion of the time. It is what was it set up what was inspirational. And in the format that I ended up creating for the vlog, it acts like a canvas where these different types of images and temporalities collide. The magazine is important for the function of looking through, which creates this idea of going back to the past. So apart from the magazine, you have the action of going back to the past through looking through pages, but this could have been given by any magazine. But the Manipulator is important because it is the kind of pinnacle of aspirational high-end fashion, and because of its size and because of its quality of photography. So this is the reason why it becomes the canvas. And then what I am collaging on top of it is the present, is the current experience which I am narrating. And then there are the gaps from advertisements. In this first episode are only advertisements, commercials from Greek TV, and some of them are from US. I don't think I have UK TV in this one. And the way that the relationships are set up, I wanted to, I'm setting up this relationship in the way of interrupting each other, because I wanted to create a gap between the past and the present. I didn't want to create this a cause-effective relationship. So this is what I was looking at the past, and this is how I end up growing in my garden now. No, I want to create a gap between the experience, because because one of my aims in making this work is to question my own construction, as I say, as neoliberal subject, my own identity. So the gap in this in previous works, I also work with this idea of creating gaps between histories in order to be able to make them more visible, or make visible connections or disconnections between them. Here in this work, the gaps are the gaps are not only in the image histories, but also in the way personal narrative is constructed. You are muted.
So here, the technique that you are using, this way of kind of like collaging different images, and the images relating to different times or spaces, is this technique that I would say that I would like to ask you whether you feel that it's a technique that you've been using across your practice in general, rather than specifically here. And could you tell us a bit more? Why you were drawn to these ideas of of collaging, but bringing different images together, and then maybe you can elaborate that also with respect to the idea of the archive, like the boxes that you mentioned, the boxes of 90s magazines that you encountered in your grandfather's house, or the Manipulator collection that you've also encountered. How do they work as a sort of archive, not only of material, but also memories for you?
So, you know my practice very well. And there was a big shift after the first 10 years where I was working only with video and making more personal narrative or first-person films. And then I somehow found material, and my practice completely changed and became what it is now, an expanded collage practice. This focus on this turn happened when I started working in Yerevan, in Armenia, making a film called My Pink City. And because I was trying to create a film which is a portrait of the city, but in post-Soviet moment, but of course I had not encountered ever I never lived in USSR, so I didn't know how the city was imagined or narrated or constructed at the Soviet time. So I started looking at archives. So looking at archives, this action of looking at archives in order to understand how the city was described through a certain political, ideological moment and construction, was what prompted me to start looking, not wanting to create images anymore, my own images, but to look at how image histories are used as tool of propaganda or advertisement, how they construct specific identities. I start by looking national identities. I have made works like A Small Guide to the Invisible Seas, which are based on tourist catalogs from Greece, Turkey, and Armenia. So very specific images of tourism. I have made works like A Handbook of the Spontaneous Other, which is another pandemic in a sense work. It didn't make it during the pandemic, but it has only existed during the pandemic and only in the book form. It is a series of collages where I interrogate or reimagined kind of feminist relationship to the body. And it is based on gender identity and how the relation between bodies are constructed, and based on popular cultural imagery from US and Western Europe. So this, what I emerge as a kind of expand collage practice is this bringing together inappropriate image histories and creating what I described before, gaps between these types of histories in order to, so the creating the gaps is first layer is a practice of deconstruction. So I deconstruct the way that the images were used in creating specific ideologies, narratives, identities, image worlds, specific way of imagining being in community and being, and creating also collective memory. And then, so there is a practice of disruption, a practice of deconstruction, and then usually in most of the cases, there is a practice of creating new image worlds, new ways of describing the world. And these new ways of describing the world could be thought as, and this is very popular, I use popular word, I would not have described it like that, but I think it fits with this way of creating the image worlds of possible futures or other paths coincides with this idea of decolonizing a certain type of histories and knowledge. Of course, there's also the feminist rereading because in this practice. So let's say this is more or less how the processes and of looking at specific image histories and the reasons behind looking at them, and is by deconstructing them and creating new worlds in order to question the very process of constructing specific ideologies, and these ideologies usually is capitalist. What happens with the manipulator, what is important and what is still where I'm still at the moment of exploring, and I don't have a complete, I'm not completely articulate about it, is that this is the first time, and the 90s are important, where I am working with an image history that I have experienced. Until this moment of the COVID pandemic, I was always working with images of the past, usually the post-war moment, because it was very important in establishing this new world order, and of course the dominance of the certain ideas of Western identity. And I was always looking at these histories as an observer, and I was deconstructing how they were constructing identities. Of course, I was also constructed through images, and this 90s, finding the 90s magazines is my moment to look at myself and look at how I was constructed. I say as a neoliberal subject, which we can discuss later. But this is not only the fact that I wanted to, this initial romantic idea that these 90s magazines somehow encompass the seeds of my creative practice is a fallacy. I'm questioning, by making the Manipulator vlog and the exercises in speaking out, I'm questioning this construction in myself, this romantic idea, which is in itself, for me, a neoliberal idea, that somehow this collection of popular culture magazines made me an artist and not a consumer. I was actually, what has actually produced is a consumer. And the vlogs, in the way that I constructed them, are an expression of this self-critique. There's another aspect, if I can continue talking, of why the 90s are important. It is, and this is where maybe they become critical, and I'm not leaving them to just realize in their realization that I've constructed in me a consumer and an artist that also produces consumers, is the garden, the relationship with images that I have lived with, and the relationship with lived experience that does not, that provides a different type of knowledge that comes, what we call embodied knowledge that comes from being in relations with the earth, with non-humans, with the body, knowledge that comes from the body. So the 90s are also, they're also important because these are images where I have lived and I'm living with, because they are here and they're part of my everyday life. And as that, they're also part of this new experience of allowing nature to teach me things. In that sense, they provide also this opportunity, read through the experience of the garden. So the garden allows me to reread these 90s magazines as a kind of, as having the possibility to provide critical thinking that comes not from intellectual processes, but through this, through other types of knowledge. But this is, for me, is very early stages, because I see the manipulator as something that is really an ongoing process, where in each episode, what is embodied knowledge becomes more and become more and more aware.
Okay, no, because I wanted, very good. I mean, you articulated so much there that it would be, yeah, that you are doing a lot of, you know, like, I could have asked other questions, but I think you articulate a lot about this. Anyhow, I was just curious about the choice of, say, the deliberate choice of the short clip, the YouTube, a little bit of YouTube aesthetics, but the idea of the vlog as a way of, like, there's this personal narrative, there's your voice and you're telling a story. And did you have to do a lot of research to see other similar YouTube channels, or is this kind of aesthetic that is more or less, that is conspicuous, say, in your life in general? I'm curious about that specific aesthetic dimension of something that is made for online YouTube style distribution.
Yes, and I was, when we were discussing, I told you from the beginning that I don't want this to be like art films. I wanted the work to function. The work is the vlog. This is the YouTube channel. I wanted to completely submerge or surrender to the, so it functions outside, I suppose, a white cube, clear-cut art environment. I did watch a lot of YouTube videos for the gardening, but then my experience of the pandemic was that I was drawn to other vlogs. So I started watching a lot of different type of vlogs of a lot of different type of people, and I found that more interesting. That is personal experience than what a lot of other people were doing, I suppose, in the pandemic, which was either watching a lot of films or watching TV series or things like that. I started watching vlogs nonstop, and then I discovered this new world, which was not, I mean, I heard of it because I had like snippets of popular culture come to me. So I knew that there are vlogs, And I knew that there are people that are influencers in Instagram, and I knew that they have large audiences, and I knew that they make money out of this. And so I was aware, but I wasn't really aware. So I discovered this amazing wealth of content and engagement. And the reasons that I wanted to focus and follow, because I'm following a little bit in my introduction, this idea and the way I'm trying to address the audience, the way that vlogs that I watched were constructed. First, because I wanted to question the format itself. So I wanted to question, as part also of this neoliberal identity that I'm trying to question, vlog as a space where aspirations are also created. So you can make it, you can be successful, you can engage a lot of people. So how YouTube, because how YouTube described, because I even did the YouTube Creators Academy kind of exam, followed, like I did, I took it very seriously. And one of the big things that they say is that you create communities. So I was very much interested in how the creation of communities, this very deep-rooted personal need or human need to be in relation, is also becomes part of this neoliberal construction of creating consumers, because what your subscribers' audience are in a sense consumers of your content. So I was interested in seeing how to set up this dynamic as an artist, and even fail. So for me, if I completely fail and I don't grow my audience, this will also be part of the function of this artwork. And the other reason why I wanted to make and mimic, or not even mimic, it is a vlog, is because I wanted to question the way art engages with audience. Because these vlogs have bigger communities of people that are engaged, completely engaged, and they write comments, and they are watching them every day, and they are, there are personal narratives, but a lot of others are not about narratives, are about processes of construction, or processes of gardening, or processes of different type of everyday processes and life ways of being. And they create communities, and they create a certain type of public. So I want, and of course, as an artist, you cannot compete. You cannot compete with this type of engagement. So I wanted to question how art constructs its own public or engages public, and how also within contemporary art, of course, with COVID, we didn't have the exhibition possibilities. So everything art had to turn into digital, which for me was a failure, because of course, how can you compete with things like vlog? And it is an opportunity, but I don't think is yet completely articulated in the 2 episodes that I've done, to question how art also produces consumers in terms of its engagement with audiences. So it's very critical. It seems very light and fluffy, but my intentions are really very critical, deeply critical, self-critical, and also, critical of my own choice, my own practice, my own community. And of course, this is my reflection from the pandemic. This is what I understood when this whole world stopped, and realized that we are vulnerable, and realized that we are set up, that the world is set up in types of relations that are not sustainable, I suppose.
Maybe we could now watch the second episode, which has been already produced, and then we could open up for questions, if that's okay. So I am just, I had to, I have it here, not now. So give me just 1 second while I'll bring the film back. I had to, okay. No, let me see if it, because it doesn't click. I have to copy and paste it. It's asking, agree. Give me just a second. It's just loading. Okay, loading. Okay, I'm going to switch on. I hope you can hear it properly, because I think there is something to do with sound here. Was it okay before, George and Aikaterini, the sound? Okay.
A little bit, yeah. But I feel like I don't want to hear my voice, but it's okay.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my vlog. It is Aikaterini here, an artist attempting to live the rural life in COVID times.
We cannot hear it now, Miguel.
Miguel, we can't hear it.
Seeds a dear friend gave me, because apparently it acts as a natural mosquito and bug repellent.
Yeah, that's good.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my vlog. It is Aikaterini here, an artist attempting to live the rural life in COVID times. Actually, this is a half-truth. I'm also looking back at the 90s, trying to understand how I was constructed as a neoliberal subject. I'm speculating how my future could have been different. So, let's get started. This is the second summer growing vegetables in the garden, and one of the biggest challenges of last year was combating pests and bugs, obviously without the use of pesticides. My aim is to create an organic garden, although I'm questioning how possible it is to isolate it from the continuous pollution of the earth around me. After the COVID experience, I'm wondering if there are really islands anymore. This year, following my father's example of planting basil next to the summer vegetables, I grew basil from seeds a dear friend gave me, because apparently it acts as a natural mosquito and bug repellent. And today, I am transplanting the basil to the various parts of the garden, starting with the aubergines and peppers, which, as you can see, they are doing very well, and then by the okra that is still young and beautiful, the tomatoes that are growing tall, and finally the green beans, which already are very productive. Fingers crossed it will all work out and I will not end up chasing bugs with my bare hands. Last year, my produce was here and there. Second summer round, I organized the garden much better by creating defined beds and considering the right spot in the garden for each crop. Locating the right place in the garden for the various crops is a crucial part of the learning process. For example, understanding which plants love and need continuous direct sunlight, like the okra here. I need to negotiate the various needs of each crop carefully, as I am growing vegetables in an established garden amongst trees and flowers and not in an open field.
What did he say?
Placing seeds in the soil and watching them grow is a mesmerizing process. It is not always plain sailing, however. I have tried to grow long beans in the bed I set aside for green bean growing, but to no avail. Actually, I tried all kinds of different bean seeds, but with no success. I'm trying one last time, throwing in lots of seeds, too many in reality, and let's see what happens. In the last episode, I promised to keep you posted about the tomatoes and the potatoes. I planted the tomatoes in the lower part of the garden next to an apple tree that keeps them a bit shaded and protected from the scorching sun. The tomatoes are growing well, and I already collected some ripe ones. The potato vines have all blossomed. I have stopped watering them, and they're in the process of dying down. I also dug out some potatoes, and they are looking good as well. But they are still a bit small, so I need to keep them in the ground just a little bit longer.
Cigar?
The next episode will be dedicated to the potato crop, something to look forward to. Till then, I leave you with some of my crops of the day, of the last few weeks, full of aubergines, courgettes, peppers, and green beans, including samples of all the little delights that the garden offers.
I did a spelling mistake.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my vlog.
Okay, sorry.
It is Aikaterini here.
Okay, so I think one clear. I'll ask another question and then we can open up. And Georgia, be prepared because I'm going to ask you to ask something. I think it's actually clear in the second episode, although it could be seen also in the first one a little bit. There's a bit of like an ironic twist or even humor that is very present here. So there is going back to what you were saying. Well, on one hand, I want to ask you about this, the use of humor, particularly the second one and the connection, like when you talk about bugs and then the cockroach cartoon, things like that. So I want to ask you about that in terms of like as a technique or as a tool, but also, it also reminds me a bit of this kind of like this irony almost when you're referring to you making a critique of us as subjects today being consumers rather than say citizens, and so that's where I see this ironic approach there, and almost like you are making fun of this context while you're narrating the story. But yeah, tell me a bit about this use of humor, because correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's less present elsewhere in the work.
It's not so well. Maybe also this is an effect of COVID, because there is a little bit of humor in all of my previous works, but I think it's really, really hidden because I never allowed myself to completely express it. So there is a little bit of humor, for example, in A Small Guide to the Invisible Seas, in some of the ways that I combined the images. There's certainly a lot of humor in the Handbook of the Spontaneous Other, in the way that I created the relation between bodies. I'm thinking in previous works, it was not so much evident, but I think from the handbook, which is the work that precedes the Manipulator vlog, I started expressing that part of my character. And I suppose the Manipulator vlog, because it is by its nature a more personal, autobiographic, a piece also that, because it is a vlog where you are supposed to expose something of yourself, I'm allowing it. It comes out. I didn't really set out that I will make it funny, but it is the circumstance and the format and the experiences allowed this type of expression to manifest. Saying that, humor might not have been so much present in previous works, but there was always a kind of cool irony, like where when you are expressed as this kind of idea where you know how things are set up to manipulate you. So in this revelation, by bringing together inappropriate image histories and creating these juxtapositions or creating gaps, I kind of reveal sometimes the function of propaganda or advertisement. And in this revelation, there is sometimes a kind of cool irony, but it is not so light, humorous as in the Manipulator vlog. I don't think all of the episodes, though, they will be humorous.
And also, just to conclude, there is also, of course, a sense of continuity. On one hand, the episodes match some of the seasons or plantation that you're doing, and on the other hand, in the second episode, you speak about the first, and you also introduce what's coming after. So how do you draft this continuity? Or do you script everything a lot in advance, or you think about each episode on its own and then you see how you refer back or you project what's coming after?
This is very early stages. So at this moment, I kind of have filmed 3 issues of the Manipulator magazine, so I could make these 3, and all this happened, accidentally. It wasn't like grand plan. Somehow everything came together, and each episode was commissioned, and then I set up the blog, and I said, okay, let's do it. So the first episode was, in a sense, the process was trying to find the language of the vlog, and trying to find the language of bringing all of things, these elements, the 90s, the turning of the pages, and me kind of attempting to film in the garden together. And I wasn't thinking of the next ones while I'm making. So it was setting up the structure, setting up the language. When I was making, because now I've been making the second and the third at the same time, I started creating kind of connections, the longer narrative and the connections between them. And I have a sense of what type of activities I will do over the month. So based on these activities and what I'm not filming, and my filming is still very basic. I haven't got these tripods and cameras and this and that to create elaborate structures and film because some of the vlogs are really, they're really like TV productions. Because I'm in these early stages, I continued with how I was filming for Instagram or making these little things. So this also dictates the type of script that I'm writing, because I'm documenting a certain type of activities in a certain specific way. And since my desire and determination is to continue this, even, which is actually quite a lot of hard work, is not it is a commitment to make an episode each month. It's not plain sailing, like I'm saying, like that's it. I am seeing it in the long term, of course, developing, and as it develops, also documenting the changing, the changing of my skills, both in the garden, both in the making of the blog, and the changing nature structure of the blog. So I think that as I go along, I know now in October there are certain types. Is this the you plan for the? I know September is the potato crop, and then the October you set up the garden for the winter months. So there will be this type of activities, and I will continue to use the Manipulator vlog as a kind of for a few more episodes. Let's see how much. But then I think as I will be making the episodes, not only the continuity will be created, but also I can see that maybe at some point they will become just gardening. Just I will leave the 90s behind, or the 90s will appear in different way. So there will be much more documentary, and I will try to really show people how I'm doing something. And then maybe some other magazine will come as the canvas of the background. So I am allowing myself to be surprised here. Yes, and I would like to observe how this embodied knowledge changes my my aesthetics.
Okay, so I would like to ask if anyone wants to intervene at this point, because we've been speaking a lot. Make a comment, ask a question.
Yeah, hi, Ekaterina, and thank you for sharing your work with us. I had two questions. I was interested in how there seems to be two kinds of fever operating in your work, and one being, I think you have spoken before possibly about archival fever, so very much coming from Derrida, and maybe how fever then relates to desire possibly, and then also fever, of course, being symptomatic of having COVID itself. And then the second question I had was, I was really interested in this idea of how you reframed the gap, and how you talked about it as not so much, as I understand it, not so much as a distance, in that you don't feel like an observer to when you're looking at these image worlds or image culture of the 90s, but there's very much more a closeness to these images. And I think you also mentioned how different temporalities collide, and I wondered if this collision was possibly how that might relate to the gap, and how that becomes this kind of connecting point.
Yeah, also, you're right. One of the premises of how a lot of my projects come about is because I allow myself to feel the archival fever. So this is a very specific, yeah, it is a very specific way of understanding the past and understanding knowledge that comes from Western knowledge construction, or Western idea of how knowledge is constructed. So we understand things because we have archive of everything, and this is how we kind of map and understand histories, and we hold knowledge. So there is this kind of not addressing, acknowledgement that in the whole of my work, that this is the collection of images and materials is a tool used in producing Western ideas, Western knowledge, or knowledge, way of constructing knowledge in the Western context. I think, and I'm articulating now for the first time, I haven't thought about before, I think in the Manipulator, still, this is the basis, because I have collected in the past, but without the intention of making art, these magazines. And then what creates, maybe I will link the two questions. What creates the gap is the fact that I'm not trying to read this knowledge through another image history, which I have done in the past, but by the experience of gardening and being, sorry. I swallowed badly. And being in nature. So I think the garden is not only important as an activity that puts us in a different relationship with non-humans or the earth or our own survival, because I produce food to eat, it is a kind of, it's not decorative, it is functional, it is for survival. This is what I lost it, sorry, because I'm going. This is what set up the critique, what I said before, of the archive. I suppose this is not something that I have thought about it, but now that you ask this question, I think that it might be something I need to think about it. That somehow I set up this, by setting up this relationship, I set up also a possibility to critique the archive itself, the function of collecting and constructing knowledge through producing, I suppose, accumulation of material, which is not the same way that you produce knowledge, suppose, if I'm allowing the garden too.
Chris, do you want to ask a question, make a comment now?
Yeah. Oh, hi.
There's another question.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Hi. So yeah.
Okay.
It was great to just see your second episode there. So I'd seen the first one before, and to see it again was good. But listening to your conversation and thinking about this, I'm just wondering, you're using some mass media representations in juxtaposition with your own personal life, if you like, gardening. And I'm just wondering that in some ways that's a newer thing. I mean, we all do it now. We see these images and we probably have our own interpretations, or they give us our own references. And it was taking me back to the 90s and thinking and recognizing some of these. But do you think that constrains, or do you think that gives you more freedom to put your individual message across, because it's against this sort of mass media representation which is already constructed for us?
Yes, I think actually using the mass media 90s advertising, apart from the fact that I want to critique how we are constructed through this really, really kind of ideas as consumer, really, really strong embedded forces in us. Because when you start gardening, you realize that, you don't need so much things to survive, feeding yourself, and all these processes are, supermarket seems like a monster. Once you start gardening, a lot of the structures that exist and that somehow are our normal life, you question its functionality or validity for existence. So in one sense, I want to remind people and bring these things in that, what are important to create, like fake sauce, and it's exotic, and or to create pests that, like, so you don't have so much mosquitoes, blah blah blah, to create aerosols. At the same time, it is a mechanism to create community, which is what the vlogs are all about. Because you see a lot of people identify with this type of messages, and because I want the vlog to function as, like, to find a way of creating some type of artistic expression that fits within this vlog internet creation, and not to be, not to be something incomprehensible. I think it fits. It fits the kind of for the moment, because as I told you, I am feeling that it will change. It will change. I cannot always create forever, like episode after episode, going back to the 90s. I think this is the beginning of setting up and mapping the reasons why this creating this type of artwork and this type of community and being with the garden and the type of knowledge and experiences and reflections about the world that comes out from this activity. The relation with the 90s is kind of the starting point for creating the connection with my past bodies of work and my past experiences. And as I move, I think I will leave it behind, and then it will become something else.
Okay, thanks.
And then I think there is something here about the archival institutions, Tom was saying.
I think
I'm not sure if
Tom doesn't have a camera or mic, so he can't really ask a question. But Tom, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But I mean, actually, I think it's also, Georgia was talking about the idea of the gap, and
yes, I didn't answer this question.
Okay, so do you want to try to elaborate a little bit on that idea? You feel? Yeah,
it is. I'm not there yet. I'm still thinking about it. But while I was making the first episode, what I will tell you my thinking process, and maybe you can help me articulate it, because it's not clear. I probably need to make more episodes. When we experience, I probably wanted to break certain ways of understanding the world, and this became important because of the COVID experience, which is a kind of gap, let's say. It is a moment of a transition or transformation. So usually what we do as people is we map our current experience based on what we experienced before. Or, this island reminds me of that island. Or this thing. So we have learned to understand patterns of behavior. And that's what I meant about cause and effect relationship. So somehow, because you did that, and then you did that, then you did that, and then this happened, and this is how you have been transformed. We are learned, even as artists in our practices, to describe the kind of shifts, to describe the transformations. I wanted, and this is still intuition, I don't know if I'm doing it, to create a gap and not explain one experience in relation to the other. So that's why I set up the relation between the 90s advertising, which construct me as the neoliberal subject, and the gardening. And I'm trying not to explain one based on the other, but I think this will be more evident in the accumulation of the work. I don't want to have continuity somehow, and I want to break this narrative, because if I break this narrative, then I'm not a neoliberal subject anymore, am I? If I break this a way of understanding my experiences as a cause and effect relationships, then I am breaking free, I suppose, something like that. But it's still very early stages for this. I think this type of ideas will come out once I am more skilled in how I'm telling these stories and how I'm bringing things together. And because
Yeah, Georgie, do you want to make any other comment, or it's okay?
Yeah, I think, I think it's, vlogs are very linear, aren't they? And something like Insta stories as well, they're very linear in their kind of, what these images become the past, and then it's always up to the present moment. So I think I like how the way that you manipulate it so that it's not so much this linear continuation, as you say, of moving into the present moment. Yeah, no, I think it's just a response to it. Yeah.
Okay, so Aikaterini, I think we have maybe 10 more minutes to make it to an hour and a half. So I'd like to ask you just one very simple question and then something else. So having watched the films and now speaking to you, and I know that you are referring to the Manipulator magazine, but I think actually the use of that word manipulator also suits. I'm not sure you were consciously using it. Yes. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about that? How you see the use of the word manipulator in the context of like this construction of the neoliberal subject?
I see it as part of the critique of how the artist's voice is also embedded in the structure of producing content and consumers, and thus part of this kind of creation, because content in this, that's again my reflection of COVID, content, all type of content, in the way that we are experiencing it in the structures of capitalism, is we will produce consumers. So we are in ourselves. So it's part of the self-critique. It relates to the advertising world of the 90s or the lifestyle culture of the 90s that I'm interrogating. And it also relates to me wanting to critique my role as a kind of manipulator, not only the way that things have been set up to manipulate it, but also personal responsibility. And again, I think the garden, and what Chris is saying, that the garden became something that became more important in terms of COVID, in the times of COVID. I think the garden, because it has such a profound, not only physical, I would say spiritual, such a profound effect in the way that I understand life. Somehow, I would like this to be the way that this manipulator will be transformed into something more positive, suppose. Maybe I changed the name of the blog.
No, I was going to mention the gardening because, you know, you could have chosen any other kind of activity that either you began or you engaged more deeply through the lockdown, or but gardening somehow, and it's not just gardening, it's actually planting the food part of the food that you also eat. Somehow there is a little bit of almost like occupational therapy in a way with respect to COVID and lockdowns, but also more than that, there is also this idea of like resisting, you know, like eating your own food, the food that you produce, you know, reconnecting to nature. Somehow there is a sort of withdrawal from the lifestyle associated with Western consumption society. Yeah.
Yes, but also the garden is not an activity. I told you, it is a kind of a dedication. It's you know, why I'm talking about the garden is I am completely honest. This is for me a dedication to producing my own food. It's and that's why I think it will become more and more important as a kind of, because it is not a technique, it's not a structure, it is not a kind of mechanism. to create critical thinking. It is this embodied knowledge, I suppose, which I'm trying to understand why it has such a kind of profound effect on my thinking. So the garden is not only about, I suppose the garden is not only about the food that I'm creating. It's certainly not about occupational therapy. It is my new way of thinking.
Okay. And so
one of the new ways.
Yeah. So just to conclude, and of course we can't expand much on what I'm going to ask now, but at some point you mentioned that you were also developing another body of work that emerged through the lockdown and has to do with engaging with the idea of the archive, which is exercises in speaking out. So maybe as a conclusion of our conversation, but also as a sort of prompt for future conversations about other projects, do you want us to tell us a little bit about that, which works as a way like what's next, what you are working on next in parallel to the vlog? Can you tell us a bit about what is this exercise in speaking out and how much you feel they are connected with this work that we discussed today, or different?
Yeah, they are totally connected because they're both coming out of the experience of the pandemic, and they're both coming out of from this encounter with the 90s collection of teenage magazines. So they are important for this reason. So in the exercises in speaking out, it was the first work that I started developing. The Manipulator came later. And what I wanted to explore by finding these 90s magazines, my artistic voice, the same type of processes. I found the magazine, somehow I thought, this is the seat of my artistic voice. This is, survival is very important in the first lockdown in COVID. I'm going to make, based on these 90s magazines, a work about survival, but survival not only as a kind of emotional, financial, economic, psychological, but survival as the process of finding your own voice. In the Manipulator, there is a critique of this voice. I think in the exercises, in speaking out, I haven't yet, I'm not sure if I'm critiquing as clearly as myself, as in my own voice, as in the Manipulator. But what I'm doing is I'm setting up a series of conversations between a series of exercises which mimic the manuals of photographic magazines. So the reference point is how photographic manuals produce a very specific way of understanding of how images are creating as a chemical engineer process that it is, which is a construction of a patriarchal, let's say, male gaze or imaginary. So I'm basically remaking the history of photography through creating these exercises where I'm speaking out because I am telling them, no, this is not how it's been done. This is how you create images. And this is done through by setting up a series of conversations between these 90s teenage magazines and all the images that I have worked so far. So this is, in this case, the autobiographic. And this is, again, the images that I have worked so far, which are the leftover of images from other projects, are part, because I've lived with them, they are also part now of my own kind of biography. This is where I am with the exercises in speaking out. And then there are eight. I have set it up as a kind of 8 exercises, which are based on 8 topologies of photographic images. But it's a different type of working process than the Manipulator. The Manipulator is more intuitive and more immediate in terms of its production. The exercises, they require a little bit more. Although I'm trying to change the way I'm working and making collages.
Georgia, are you there? Yeah. Okay, so I guess we lost Aikaterini. It's not a general Zoom thing. Okay. Well, I'm not sure she's coming back. She was at the end of her answer, and we were also about to conclude our conversation. So I'll be in touch with her to see what might have happened. Maybe she's kind of power lost or something. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for being with us today. It has been a pleasure having the opportunity to engage with Aikaterini and all of you, and also having the opportunity to show the work for those who had not seen it yet. We will be, you're back here. You are muted. She's muted. I don't know what she's trying to say to us. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't realize that I was disconnected, and then I will keep continuing talking to myself.
Now I was just concluding. If you want to just pick up where you left, or we leave it as it is. I think it was clear. You were basically you were just saying that you are potentially changing some methodology around working around the collages. Yeah, that's where you were, right? When we lost you.
Yes. That the exercises I kind of explained how they're set up, but I think also the way I'm making collages is changing.
Yeah.
Or something.
So we will be, Aikaterini and I are working on another project which will involve presenting some work related to what she just discussed, one element of the exercises. So we probably will organize another conversation at some point in this autumn around it. So you are more than welcome to join us at that time. There will be information around it, or the same ways that you came across our event today. Again, I want to thank you all for being here on my behalf and on behalf of Sirius Art Center. Aikaterini, final words?
Subscribe to my blog in order to keep it real.
So have a nice rest of the day and enjoy the rest of the summer. And we look forward to seeing you at some point on Zoom or in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you, everyone. And thank you for helping me articulate, Georgia, as well, some of the ideas.
Thank you so much. See you very soon then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.